Hey everyone, welcome to another video. Today we're going to talk about issue number 2 and issue number 3 of Uncanny Spider-Man, written by C. Spurrier. But before we dive into the story, I want to say thank you for watching my videos and leaving great thoughtful comments down below to help the channel grow. For without all your help, I wouldn't be doing this. And I'm happy to be bringing some value to my viewers, thank you. So with that said, this issue opens with Nightcrawler and Mystique having a strange conversation. Because apparently, Mystique is suffering from some kind of mental breakdown, and no matter how many times Kurt has the same conversation with her, Mystique's mind just seems to regress back to a state of fight or flight while constantly asking for the whereabouts of her quote-unquote baby. Now just to give some additional context, Nightcrawler has no idea what the heck is going on, and no matter how many times he tells her they have already been through this conversation, Mystique just gets angry and runs off. Now one additional thing she brings up is how Irene said something important to her, but for the life of her, she can't remember what. So with things in a weird place, Nightcrawler goes to touch his mother's shoulder when out of nowhere Mystique nails him with a mean backhand. Now the reason why she did this is because she seems to have no idea that the masked man was Nightcrawler. So following the interaction, Mystique collected all her things and took off. So with Mystique in the wind, Kurt teleports to a different location in the park to try to clear his mind. But during this time of self-reflection, Nightcrawler's little devil appeared once more to give its point of view. And just like the last time we saw this manifestation, it only provided a negative feedback. So just as that conversation was playing out, a bright light caught Kurt's attention, and out of the glare walked none other than Dagger. And let's just say, Kurt right out of the gate started to flirt with her. So while they were talking, Dagger brought up the reason for Cloak's absence, and that was because of a fight they had earlier. But see, this wasn't their first argument, so usually when they do fight, Cloak goes away for a short amount of time before returning. So with the small talk out of the way, Dagger brings up how she was stopped several times by Stark Sentinels because it kept checking her for an X gene because of her ability. Now all her life both Dagger and Cloak were seen as X-adjacent, so with that said, combine that with Cloak's behavior and it makes a perfect storm that worries Dagger. Because Cloak is the kind of person who would most likely bring the smoke whenever challenged. So with her problems on the table, Dagger brings up how Spider-Man told her that Kurt has been dealing with some muggers around the park as of late. Which is a complete simplification of his situation, because there is honestly so many things going on with him that he chose not to talk about. And this situation is no exception, because Nightcrawler just goes along with it. So once the conversation was over, Dagger left Kurt sitting alone to ponder his thoughts. Until out of nowhere, an Orchis-enhanced Rhino comes crashing onto the scene ready to do some damage. So with Nightcrawler caught off guard, the fight was on. And while all that is playing out, we see Silver Sable in the command room with the Orchis liaison watching everything go down. Because apparently, Orchis wanted Silver Sable and her team to use their newest asset in battle so they could collect data in the form of a field test. So as the fight carries on, we see Kurt go straight for the glowing device on Rhino's head, trying to pull it off with all his might, because that glowing gadget attached to Rhino is a mind control device, much like the one Orchis used on Kurt when they had him assassinate world leaders. So with the secret out the bag, Silver Sable pointed out how that kind of technology is super against the law and highly illegal. And because of that update, the price of their services just went up an extra zero, and to make the liaison feel better, she told him to consider it an amorality bonus. So with little to no options available for the liaison, he begrudgingly said, "Fine, take whatever you want, just don't let him take off that tech, because it is still experimental. So if they need to take the shot, then do it." Now once the liaison said that, the price tag went up again because, from Silver Sable's point of view, this was still considered first contact, which means they are only supposed to probe, test, and surveil the target, nothing more. Because the last thing Silver Sable wants to do is rush into battle without the proper information and get wiped out. So with Orchis clearly incapable of handling fieldwork, she orders the liaison to transfer control of Rhino over to her suit immediately. So with the power in Silver Sable's hands, one of her soldiers gets too far ahead of himself and orders his teammates to take the shot. And right before Sable could shut down that order, the Orchis member turned off her mic. So with their communication system down, the team activated a force field device to surround our hero and cut off his ability to teleport. And once he was pinned down, Sable's team came out from all angles with tranquilizer darts to put down their target. But with Kurt's crazy reflexes, he was able to avoid all of them until one member deployed a snare to wrap our hero up. Now, once it made contact, it worked as intended and put Kurt on the ground with no problem. So with the plasma shield trapping Kurt in and the snare holding him down, Silver Sable's teammate by the name of Kramer thought the battle was over and the operation was a success. But little did he know, Kurt had an ace up his sleeve, because when no one was looking, he activated his magical sword and sliced his way free. And before Kramer knew it, Kurt landed a flying kick right to his face and turned to face Sable. So with those two going back and forth, Silver Sable makes a few key deductions. First, the magical sword wasn't in his file. Second, the magical sword disappeared after he had been disarmed. And third, his tail feels really soft. So with Silver Sable getting the upper hand, she managed to push him onto the floor and hold him at gunpoint, which put the fight in a temporary pause. But just as that was happening, the device on Rhino's head started to malfunction, which caused him to go crazy and charge towards the field. But right before he does that, Kurt and Silver Sable have a small conversation. Because Kurt tells her that he doesn't know who they are or why they are working for those fascists, but he is not their enemy. In which Sable responds by saying, of course not, because her organization doesn't have enemies, they only have profits. So with that out there, she then goes on to say that he was hit by at least one tranquilizer dart, and because of the plasma shield, he can't teleport either. So with both things acting against him, it would be in his best interest to stay down. But with all things considered, the fact that he was hit by a dart and hasn't fallen asleep yet shows just how fast his metabolism is, and a testament towards his mutant ability. But just as she was saying that, Nightcrawler managed to jump in just in time and grab her and then BAMFer to safety. But upon getting there, the location they went to was completely dark, for Kurt BAMFed them 30 feet underground in an abandoned train tunnel. And let's just say while they were down there, the two had a very interesting conversation. For Kurt was putting the moves on Silver Sable, and once they activated the light on her helmet, the two were in a rather close embrace. But Forever the Soldier, she quickly puts a gun to Kurt's face, if only to show that she was in control. Because after a few shakes on the upper level, the two fell onto the ground into each other's arms. And before any of them could think things through, Silver Sable landed a well-placed kiss on Nightcrawler's lips. And let's just say, she was in no hurry to get up. So after a pretty deep kiss, Silver Sable snaps out of her love bite and apologizes for doing so. And just like a playboy, Kurt responds by saying, "This doesn't warrant an apology, because you are kissing me instead of killing me." Now at first, Sable started to make excuses on why she was kissing him, by blaming it on some mutant ability that Kurt doesn't have, by saying he could be releasing pheromones or something. But that is when Kurt shoots down that idea by breaking the news that is not in his power set. So with the noise getting closer, Sable looks at her control panel and relays that Rhino's device is malfunctioning. And because his last order was to take out Nightcrawler, that was exactly what he was planning on doing, even if it meant breaking through the ground to find him. So with Rhino showing up, Silver Sable deactivated the plasma force field above them to give Kurt the opportunity to escape, because they are paid to capture him alive, not kill him. So with Kurt able to teleport again, he brings up how he could teleport two people as it stands. So with that said, Silver Sable assumed that he was talking about her, so she asked where he was going to take her, in which he replied by saying, "Where wouldn't I?" But in a twist, he wasn't talking about her, because he ended up teleporting on Rhino's shoulder and bamfing away high above Orchis's van, and on the way down he fought with all his might to remove the mind control device before crashing into the ground. So with the van destroyed and Kurt in the wind, Silver Sable found herself sitting alone wondering to himself how this job is going to be more complicated than she assumed. And with that said, this issue of Uncanny Spider-Man issue number 2 comes to an end. So with chapter 2 out of the way, we will jump straight into issue number 3. So with that said, this issue opens with a dialogue from an unknown man explaining how a creature made landfall at approximately 7:37 p.m. Now he admits that he is no expert on the topic, but to his understanding, the deviants are supposed to be a savage race, and from time to time, their genes puke up a gigantic kaiju monster specimen. Now, he also goes on to say, because of that occurrence, sentinels always show up to wait for those creatures' arrival, like clockwork, similar to the media and regular civilians looking for a thrill. Now the way they could figure out the kaiju arrival is because of their extensive files on the topic. But despite all the data on hand, sometimes they end up with a curveball that not even their algorithm could foresee. And that unforeseen problem was Kurt. So with Nightcrawler on the scene, Orchis made sure to suppress all the media reports mentioning Nightcrawler. And as for Silver Sable's team, on several occasions they came really close to catching him. So with that analysis out there, Nimrod replies by saying, not close enough, because those mercenaries are ideologically autonomous, and because of that, they are considered a liability. And on top of that, Toons wasn't given permission to engage them. So as an outcome, Toons is told to fire them immediately. But see, that is when Toons responded by saying, he tried, but Silver Sable stated that they don't stop until the job is done. Now, from Toons' perspective, this isn't really a big problem, because if he didn't hire them, then Orchis would have made him rush out his prototypes before they were ready. And if that would have happened, then most likely they would have failed and been put on the shelf before they really even had a chance. But due to Silver Sable's team buying time, Toons is finally ready to deploy his project. Because up to this point, all the departments within Toons' facility was hustling to please Nimrod. The mind control team couldn't subdue Kurt, the modeling division couldn't stage the optics, and the Sentinel Ops couldn't track down Nightcrawler as well. But the detained captive that Nimrod brought in has given up so many secrets to Toons, to where he was able to engineer marvels from his code. So because of Toons' breakthroughs, he insisted to be given permission to test his creations. So with that said, Nimrod didn't take kindly to Toons' choices of words, and told him not to make the mistake of believing that because he wears skin of an angel, that he could make demands of a god. So with Nimrod exerting his dominance, he goes on to tell Toons how he has a theory regarding Kurt's ability to evade Orchis' scanners. Basically, they are blaming his connection with a reality warper like Legion. But no matter how he is able to pull it off, Orchis cannot tolerate a popular rebel, and because of that, Nimrod approved Toons' request to use his hounds. And as for his higher help, Nimrod wants to use them as a control against which they can judge the hounds' progress. But just because Nimrod is willing to use Silver Sable's team, doesn't mean he trusts her team, because in his eyes they are only human. So speaking of only being human, on the next page, we see just how human Silver Sable is. Because on top of a rooftop we see Sable and Kurt going way further than just a kiss. And by the way they was speaking afterwards, this isn't their first time. In fact, they have been together so many times that Kurt tells her that they can't continue to do this, because one day they will have to fight. So with the love high in the air, Sable tells him that she is a professional, and as a professional her team cost an absurd amount of money. So much money that her country economic foundation relies on them. So with that said, for as long as her helmet is off, she is Sylvija Sablanova, but once her helmet is back on, then she is back Silver Sable, and as for Kurt, he will become Mr. Creepy Crawler. And because of that, sooner or later, she will get him. So with the line established, Kurt and Silver Sable returned back to their moment to bond, and the way they did it was by singing a song by Lila Cheney. So with the song over, the two began to kiss as they hold each other under the stars. And during their shared bonding, Sable brings up her family history, but most importantly her mother. And as soon as she brought her up, Kurt jumped up because he remembered how late he was meeting his mother. So with no time to waste, he put on his clothes and told Sable that he will find her tomorrow and bamf away. Following that, we transition over to a city with Kurt appearing in the middle of a walking trail, and while there, he was looking for Mystique because every night around this time he sees her. And just like clockwork, Mystique showed up, but this time, she was in a hurry. Because according to her, they have managed to catch her scent, and now, they have his too. So the only option he has left available is to run. So with that said, high above on a rooftop, we see two hounds ready to attack their prey. And on a side note, let me just say they look pretty badass. But anyway, with Mystique taking off, Kurt felt firsthand what they could do. So with that taste, Kurt bamfed away with the two hounds hot on his trail. And during their hunt, we find out that one of the hounds is none other than Dagger. Now this is a big switch up for Orchis' usual methods. Because like Dagger said in the previous issue, she is not a mutant, but rather, mutant adjacent. So with everything going belly up, Dagger reveals that Orchis isn't mind controlling them, but rather changing the way they think to adjust how they feel about certain things. So with that out there, Dagger tells him that he doesn't have to help her find Cloak anymore, because Cloak is now a hound as well. So before he knew it, Kurt was absorbed by Cloak, and just like that, they turned their attention back to Mystique. And in no time at all, Cloak had Mystique dead to rights and moments away from taking her in. But just before he could do so, Kurt summoned his sword and sliced his way out of the hound. So with Nightcrawler free, Cloak laid defenseless on the ground, and before anyone could stop her, Mystique put a round in his head. But strange enough, that did little to nothing to stop Cloak. Because within moments, Cloak was back to his hound self. And within a blink of an eye, Cloak teleported away to the rest of his team, for they have successfully captured several mutants. So with Kurt and Mystique in the clear for a moment, Mystique reveals that her goal was to lead the hounds away, because she was trying to save other mutants. So with the news drop, another bombshell comes up, and that was in the form of Vulture making his way to his hounds. Because the manifestation that follows Nightcrawler points out that Vulture has the same techno-organical circuits as an old friend of theirs. Because back when Kurt was turned into a monster, Nimrod hacked Krakoa and kidnapped Warlock. But at the time nobody knew what Orchis had in store for that code, but now it is obvious. They are using Warlock code to create hounds. And with that said, issue number 3 of Uncanny Spider-Man comes to an end. Now as for these two issues, I got to say, I didn't see a relationship between Nightcrawler and Silver Sable coming. And to be completely honest, I really don't mind it, especially after everything Kurt been through. And as for Warlock, I've been waiting to see the other shoe drop after the conclusion of Legion of X. Now with that established, I hope you enjoyed this video, and please don't forget to leave a like and a comment if you want to see more videos like this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.